In this demonstration, I will be uploading content into an S3 bucket using the AWS Management Console. Now, the S3 bucket, remember, kind of serves as a centralized cloud repository for objects, for files that you can organize into folders or directories, if you'd rather call them that. This can be done programmatically, automatically through code. It can be done with the CLI, with PowerShell, and of course, we're going to do it using the console GUI. So the first order of business is to navigate to the S3 console. So I'll go ahead and do that where I can get a list of buckets. One of the things to consider before you upload content into an S3 bucket is the region into which that bucket was created. So we've got the AWS region column here. It's also sortable. You can click on it to sort it however you choose. But if we know that we're going to be having either apps or users talking to an S3 bucket in a particular region, then that's probably where we should create the bucket and then have that content that they will interact with. And yes, of course, we could have a CloudFront content delivery network configuration that puts data near users by caching it. But still, we should take steps ahead of time besides that to put resources near where they are needed. So I've got a bucket here called Budgets-East. It's in the US East 1 region, so that's fine. I'll click Budgets East, open up that bucket. So there's nothing in it. We have a message that says no objects. First thing I'm going to do is create a folder. Now you can upload content directly into the root of the bucket. That's not a problem. But I'm going to start by clicking Create Folder. And I'm going to create a folder called 2022, since we're talking about budgets. Now there's a note up above that says, depending on how your bucket policy and its permissions are set, you might not be able to create folders, even though you're logged in with an admin account. Down below, do we want to enable server-side encryption at the folder level? I'm going to go ahead and choose Enable, and then the encryption key type shows up down below. I'm going to stick just with Amazon S3 managed keys. I'll click Create Folder. We now have a folder, 2022. Of course, if I click on that folder to go into it, from here I can create a nested hierarchy of additional folders. I'm not going to do that, but I am going to click the Upload button to get some sample files in here. So we could drag and drop files using our Windows GUI into this location, or we could click Add Files. We could even add an entire folder that might contain subfolders and files within them that we have on our local on-premises computer that we want to get into the S3 bucket. But what I'm going to do is just click Add Files. So I've selected a couple of sample budget files. They're very small. They're just text documents. Down below, the destination, of course, is our folder that we are in, where we were when we clicked the Upload Files button to begin with. I can click Destination Details. And so it's just showing me things like at the bucket level, encryption is disabled, object lock and versioning are disabled. Down below, under Permissions, we have the Access Control List, or ACL. But I'm not going to do that. It recommends that we use S3 bucket policies or IAM policies to control access to the bucket. And finally, down under Properties, the default storage class where my uploaded files will be stored is Standard. So it's designed for frequently accessed data more than once a month with milliseconds access. If you're only going to be talking to these objects in this bucket maybe once a month, you might think about Standard IA. IA standing for infrequently accessed. The idea being you can save on costs if you don't have high-speed, quick storage. Further down, we could enable an encryption key. We could enable checksums or hashing to make sure that what was uploaded hasn't been corrupted during the upload process, especially useful for larger file uploads. And that's all I'm going to do here. I'm not going to add tags. So I'm going to go ahead and click Upload. It won't take very long before these files are uploaded because they're just small text files. And down below, each of the 3 files shows up in the list. If I click on any one of them to open up the properties for that file, it opens up a new web browser tab where I've got the properties. So the owner of the file, that would be my account that I'm logged in with currently, is shown here, the region, the modification date and timestamp, the size. There's also the actual HTTP-based object URL. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. If we try to access that URL directly in another web browser tab, it says access denied because public access is not allowed to objects in this S3 bucket. So that's expected. Down below further, the storage class is showing here as standard. If we decided that we wanted to change that, I could click Edit and make a change, but I'm not going to change that item. Same goes with the server-side encryption, the checksum options, all of that stuff. If I click permissions, currently the object owner, so my AWS account for who I'm logged in as, by default, I am set with object read permissions and object ACL read and write permissions. Now, for everyone public access, nothing is set. If I wanted to, I could click edit and I could allow public read access, which means what it says. You don't have to authenticate. You are allowing anonymous access. So you'd have to turn on the check mark here to say, I understand what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save the changes. And so if I open up our web browser tab and paste in the same URL we used earlier when we had an access denied message, this time, instead, we are shown the contents of that file. It's just a TXT file. Otherwise, if it's some kind of specialized files and there's not a browser add-on to handle it, we'll be prompted to download it. Okay, so that works fine. If versioning is enabled, we'll also be able to go and see multiple versions of this file as they were written to over time. Of course, if I go back to my object folder, I could select one or more of these files, and some of the buttons will gray out when I select more than one, but others will still be available, where I could copy, move, calculate the total size used by those objects. But you can also select individual items here and download them to your device if you want to work with it locally. Of course, you can also delete these entries if they're no longer required and they don't need to be retained at all. So that gives us a sense then of how we work with uploading content into an S3 bucket using the AWS Management Console.